Good morning, this is Shelby Law with the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for Wednesday, May 15th, 2019. Shown here is the precipitation for the last 14 days. We've had a pretty good dry spell across Idaho and northern Nevada since the beginning of the month, with some pretty heavy precipitation across the southern tip of the region. That's all about to change, however, as we look at the forecast for the next week or so. Just wanted to show a comparison between snow depth on this date this year compared to snow depth on this date last year on the right. The main differences between the snow depth between this year and last year is across Utah, where we're still seeing a pretty healthy snowpack across central and southern portions of the state, really statewide. Further north in Idaho and Wyoming, the snowpack is fairly similar to what we were seeing last year, with some differences. Actually, maybe some areas that are a little bit drier or have less snowpack this year than they did this time last year. This morning's satellite imagery is showing a pretty deep trough of low pressure off the California coast that's going to be moving into the Great Basin, really starting today, but hitting the area with precip starting on Thursday through the weekend and even into the first part of next week, and dropping temperatures significantly from where we are today. So we'll take a look at that low, spreading moisture into mainly western Nevada and up into Idaho today with very high ventilation rates. Transport winds will begin to pick up this afternoon in Nevada, with gusts over 45 to 50 miles an hour possible across much of the state. And gusty winds, not quite as high, but still pretty strong up into Idaho and portions of western Utah today. Mixing heights are very high, mainly over Utah and Idaho. But still pretty good over Nevada. On Thursday, that low swings further into the Great Basin, continuing to bring precipitation mainly to Idaho and Nevada and moving into western Utah. Ventilation rates are still very high. On Thursday, we'll really start to see the wind speeds pick up. Some of the gustiest winds we've seen for quite a while. Wind gusts over 55, 60 miles an hour over central and southern Utah as that low begins to move into the western Great Basin. Mixing heights are high area-wide. On Friday, the low kind of moves directly overhead over the Great Basin, continuing to bring cooler temperatures and showery weather across much of the geographic area. Ventilation rates remain high. Again, the gusty winds will have moved off to the east just a bit, certainly for some lighter winds on Friday, as the low sits kind of directly overhead, with high mixing heights area-wide. The forecasted clearing index for the next 3 days is very high statewide for Utah. The 3-day precipitation accumulation totals are shown here. This takes us through Saturday morning. And we're looking at the most favored areas coming to central Idaho mountains, western Idaho, and much of northern and central Nevada. Incidentally, those areas that have been quite dry since the 1st of May. And then we'll see that precipitation also beginning to move into western Utah. On Saturday, another low pressure system begins to develop off the Pacific Northwest coast, and that will begin to spread moisture into Nevada once again. Ventilation rates continue to remain high. And on Sunday, that low tracks across the geographic area, bringing another pretty good amount of precipitation to the region. The effects of this low will linger into Monday. We will possibly begin to see some drying into Nevada, but showers will remain in the forecast for Utah and Idaho on Monday. And then another low possibly moves up into the Pacific Northwest on Tuesday, bringing another shot of moisture into the northern 2/3 of the Great Basin. So really we're looking at a pretty wet 7-day forecast. Here's the precipitation for days 4 and 5. Continued precipitation amounts here over, between 1/2 and 1 inch in the blues there. For the next 7 days, we're looking at between 1 inch to 2 inches across some of the higher elevations of Utah and Nevada, and possibly up to 3 inches or so over the higher elevations of Idaho. And at the higher elevations, we do certainly expect to see some snow associated with these areas of low pressure, as the temperatures will come down quite a bit. The extended forecast from the Climate Prediction Center doesn't change too much. We're still looking for below normal temperatures and above normal precipitation going into the last week of May, delaying some of our typical dryness this time of year. This concludes today's smoke dispersion briefing. Please check back on Friday for the latest updates.